Okay. So in yesterday, we discussed more about the internal workflow of Spring Web Module. How Spring Web Module is working internally, how how Spring Web Module is designed internally with respect to our request and response applications or client server applications. We are trying to understood yesterday, right? So what is the main concept of Spring Web Module internally? What is the architecture? What is the architecture they are following? What is the concept? అది అసలు క్లారిటీయే లేవు Sorry. So what is the concept they are using internally? Front controller design pattern, right? So what is the meaning of front controller? So what is the meaning of front controller? What exactly it is doing? It is just standing, in a web application or in a backend application, every request always reaching to the what? Front controller. Every request from any client is always reaching to the front controller. So can I say, when you are working with the servlets, a servlet as a front controller, can I say like front controller, servlets application is following front controller design pattern by default? No. So see, front controller in the sense, how many controllers you are maintaining? Only one controller in the Spring Web application. But in servlets, every servlet is a controller. Every servlet is a controller. It's not like you sent request for this /hello, it went to one servlet and then it reached to another servlet. Is it happening? No, right? Directly it is reaching to the hello servlet or something like that by default when we are writing. But here, what kind of architecture they implemented? They are just trying to make sure every object, every request is transferring to a dispatcher servlet. So what is the meaning of dispatcher servlet? Here it is dispatcher. What is the meaning of dispatcher? Generally in our in our meanings, what is in our real life, what is the meaning of dispatching? Your order is dispatched, right? So what is the meaning of order getting dispatched? So it reached to this respective home. You placed an order, it's reaching to your home. How it is reaching? Your order is dispatched to your home. So based on your location, based on your address information, the delivery boy is dispatched your order to your home, right? So similarly here also, dispatcher servlet is just, that's why they given the name. The request is finally dispatching to where? What is that ultimately where it is reaching finally? Controller or not? So when request came to, here. So whenever a request coming to the dispatcher servlet, ultimately the request is going to where? Controller. When controller is existed, so internally by using all this information, finally the request is going to the controller class or not, and respective method or not. So that is what the meaning of dispatcher servlet, or the given name as a dispatcher. What it is doing? It is dispatching the request to respective or the correct controller and its method or not, based on the request mapping information. So here, can I consider request mapping as your address details with respect to our day-to-day orders, how it is getting delivered? Without you are providing any order, your location order is going to be dispatched? No, right? So you are giving the details where it has to come. So directly it is reaching to, based on those instructions, based on those request details or address details, it is reaching to your home. Same kind of concept or not? So when you are just taking as a use case. So here also the request always reaching to the dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet internally taking help of what? Handler mapping concept, handler mappings, request handler mappings. As part of request handler mappings, what is being done when you are deploying our Spring Web application internally? What they are doing? They are scanning every controller class, and from every controller class, what they are scanning? Request mapping methods. So when can I say a method as a request mapping method? When a method is annotated with some request information, some URI, some HTTP method, or that method is annotated with some request mapping annotation. So those methods are scanned by the Spring Web module internally, and what it is doing? It is making some mapping information internally. So for this URI, for this HTTP method combination, what is the controller class? What is the method name? Like that internal it is maintaining some information or not. So like this, right? So now, okay, this is all happening at the time of application deployment. When you are starting your application, this entire process is being happened internally. Now, whenever you are sending a request, whenever a request is went from the client to dispatcher servlet for a URI for a HTTP method. Okay, you're sending something like slash login and post. Then immediately what dispatcher servlet will do? What dispatcher servlet is doing? Is it directly sending request to respective controller? Is it request directly reaching to the controller from the dispatcher servlet? There are so many controllers, so many methods available. Then how it is knowing that this request has to go to respective controller? You may have a lot of controllers. Then what request dispatcher is doing internally? It's not forwarding directly request to controller. So what it is doing? It is taking this URI information, there is request mapping information, whatever coming from the front end. So it is just passing this information to the handler mappings of concept. So handler mapping. So internally, there are a lot of objects will be created with respect to handler mappings. So here it is verifying, do you have any information with slash login and with HTTP method post or not? Then handler mapping will give information to the dispatcher servlet. If that combination already data is available, that means if that request mapping is already available, then it will say, yes, we have a controller, we have a method for this combination. Like that, it will give information to here request dispatcher servlet is forwarding request to the controller, or the handler mapping giving response back to the dispatcher servlet. Yes, handler mapping giving response back to the dispatcher servlet. Yes, there is a controller called as login controller, and inside that there is a method is defined for this URI path and this HTTP method user login, something like that. It will give information back to the dispatcher servlet. So by the time, now what dispatcher servlet is doing, based on this information, it will invoke that respective controller class object, and it will execute that respective. It will forward that request information to the controller of this respective controller to this method. The object, the request will be forwarded by the dispatcher servlet. So by the time controller objects are going to be created or not? In Java, everything is object oriented. Controller objects are getting created or not? How it is getting created? Automatically, how controller objects are getting created? Because it's a nothing but a component class. So we already know that component classes are always scanned at the time of you are starting our application with an annotation of @component scan annotation. So @component scan annotation, are we configured in our Spring Boot application anywhere else? No. Then how it is identifying? It is part of Spring Boot application annotation, where the main method class is getting created. We know that it is combination of 3 annotations. One of them is component scan. So this is how you have to remember. This is what I just given the backtrace. You just need to understand in such a way. Spring Boot application contains component scan. Component scan will scan all component classes. So controller is a component class. That is how controller object is getting created. In interviews, they will ask you how controller object is getting created. Generally, in Spring, how many ways we can create the bean object? One is @bean method. Second one is component, right? So then how controller object is getting created? Because controller indirectly derived from component. So it's nothing but indirectly a component class. It's indirectly a component class. So it is just acting as a component class so that object is created by the Spring container while you are starting your application, while you are deploying your application. You got the point now? So these are all interrelated. Just remember. Okay. So you got the point now. Handler map. This is what we discussed yesterday. And once the method is executed, maybe the login, user login method is executed, and whatever the value you are returning from that method, for example, you are returning as a model and view. So what is the model here? The data what you want to transfer to the client, the response data, model representing the response data. So it might be anything. It might be a small sentence, 2 sentences, or maybe 10 employee objects, thousands of employee objects you loaded from the database, whatever it is, the response data. So here inside model and view, what is the view again? The respective JSP page, which has to be loaded at response time, and this response data has to be rendered on which JSP page? That name we are going to give as a view name. So finally, with this combination, again, what dispatcher servlet is doing? It is connecting, or it is internally checking with what concept again? Once the method is executed, you are returning model and view object by passing all the information. So to the dispatcher servlet, then dispatcher servlet is doing what? Is it directly sending request to client? So the dispatcher servlet has to verify, is this the view is really available or not? So then what is the internally one more component we have? View resolver, internal resource, view resolver. So this is what? Yeah, so this is what I given yesterday, right? Internal resource view resolver concept. So it will go to the view resolver. Based on this information, it will identify inside this views folder, so and so JSP file is available or not. If available, then only your request is finally the response is just passing to the JSP file, and you are able to see the data. For example, request is not there. Then you may get different errors in your client level. 404 not found, or sometimes white label error pages. All these errors you are going to get when respective JSP is not found, or respective JSP level, if you are not maintain the proper model logic implementation inside the JSP also, sometimes you will get the exception. Okay. So this is what we discussed yesterday. It's a very important flow. Please remember handler mappings, view resolvers, dispatcher servlet. These are all things are internal to the Spring Web Module functionality. In our day-to-day programming, we will never ever see, or we will never ever touch dispatcher servlet, handler mappings, view resolvers. Directly, we will not interact with these concepts. These are all internal process. Okay. Our concept is always, in a development time, we are always going to develop what? Only controller onwards. But before that, handler mappings, view resolvers, dispatcher servlet, these are all internal concepts of designed by the Spring Web Module, or internally how it is working. But you have to remember the flow internally, how it is managing or just taking the responses request by the dispatcher servlet. Okay, in case if it is view resolver, then it will contact the view resolver. And then finally, the respective JSP is rendered as a HTML, and that file is going to be forwarded to that response is forwarded to the REST client by the dispatcher servlet. Ultimately, the request is came to the dispatcher servlet. The response is transferred to the respective client by the dispatcher servlet only. So this is what following a front controller design pattern. Okay, let's open our source code. Okay, so here, let me open controller classes. So Vikram, just send me your code to my mail ID. I can resolve there. Okay, I cannot tell you what is the problem and all. Okay, so now see here, please concentrate again. If you are having any errors, doubts, you can ask me in the last 5 minutes. Don't ask right now. Don't disturb the class flow. Okay, so see here, what I done now, I created one more endpoint with the, or one more URI method with the URI path called as /hello. But by the time /hello is available or not. So yesterday I told you one more point when I explained about the handler mappings. Every time whenever it is making a mapping, by the time it will verify already with that combination, an entry is available or not. With /hello and HTTP method get, already a combination is available or not. Where it is available? Inside the welcome controller. Okay, inside the welcome controller, it's already available. But today where I written? One more hello. Leave about the logic. You assume different logic you written. Okay, but where I written? Inside the user controller. So what will happen now? The application is going to be started successfully. So see here, or is it going to override one URI with another URI? What is happening? Just what is our expectation? Deployment is going to fail, or it is going to be override one hello with another hello. Definitely deployment is going to fail. So what is the problem now? See here. Okay, I will stop this. Okay, so see here. So why this line is printed? Why this object is created? It's a component class. Yesterday we created a component class simply. And observe here what happened now. Error creating bean with name. Yesterday anyone else tried this problem? I told you yesterday itself, when you are maintaining with same URI path, you are going to get an exception when you are starting your application. While you are doing deployment or when you are starting your application itself, you are going to get the exception. Anyone else tried? You don't try, you will not get the subject. You will get the subject if you try. Okay. So whenever I am saying also, you guys are not trying. That's what your problem. When I'm not saying you are not done, then might be okay. But I told you very clearly by taking Excel sheet, all these things, and I told you when it is making an entry internally, it will verify first of all with that combination anything is available or not. If it is available, then you are going to get an exception. I told you this point very clearly yesterday, but you don't try. Okay, so that's what. You will get subject if you are trying, then you will get more money. Okay, so see here, what is this? It is trying to create bean for welcome controller and it is trying to get data of say hello, but it is saying this is already, there is already available inside the user controller bean. It's already available inside the user controller bean method. So that's why it is unable to create a handler mapping for the hello, which you written inside the welcome controller. So you got the point now. You have to maintain definitely a unique URI path or a request path across all the controller classes or not. Yes, you have to make sure. So please try all these experiments, guys. Then only you will get the subject. Yesterday I told you this class name, hash, method names and all. Now you got why I taken this kind of syntax in my explanation. So why I taken this kind of way here also. So that is what. Explore the code. Go to the logs. Try to produce the exceptions. Get exceptions. Then only you will get the subject. Fix the exceptions. Then only you will get the subject. So very clearly, what is this? Yesterday we discussed ambiguity, ambiguous mapping, so that it is unable to start our. So now tell me our Spring Boot application is started successfully. In this case, can I say my application is started successfully? So where is, you don't see anything. Server started with so and so port number, and even it is, see here, it's getting terminated. So that means when you are deploying your application, your code is having any problem, or if you are not followed so and so guidelines says, then deployment is failed. In the sense, application is not yet started. Application is not started. Application is having some problems. So this is what yesterday I told you. So observe how they are maintaining the code, the mapping internally. Generally, how can you map? Mapping information, key comma values, right? So the guess they might have used hash map, like key as a combination of URI path value as a controller and its respective method. You have to think in such a way as a developer. Understand all these stack trace. I'm telling you, exceptions and errors will give you a lot of subject than a training. Okay, so please try to get a lot of errors and exceptions. Then you will get the subject. Okay, so fine. So what I have to do now? One thing is I have to change this URI path to someone else. I mean, some differentiation I have to show, then only it will work. Okay, so leave it. Now, I written logic for the user registration, but let's talk about the service layer integration. So we got data until this level or not? Earlier we tested. Until this level we got the data. Okay, if you want, I can test one more time and then quickly we'll discuss about service layer and everything. Okay, now tell me, to load this page, what is the endpoint I have to call first? To load, I mean, to execute this endpoint, we have to load a user registration form. To load user registration form, what is the endpoint we written? /register. So first of all, see, if you see here arrow mark with green color, it is started successfully. And even if you observe here also, what is this? Tomcat started. Now your application is good. Okay, so let me send the request. Localhost. Port number 9999. Okay, you got the form. So now I can enter Dilip or email ID. Mobile number, something I entered, submit. So user registered successfully for the user ID called as dilip@gmail.com. So go to the Springboot application. The data reached to the Springboot application or not? Finally, it reached to the controller layer or not? Yes. So that means the integration from view layer to controller layer is completed successfully or not? Everything is good or not? So until from view to controller, the request is landed and you are able to see all the data, what coming from the view layer inside the controller layer, we can see the data. Now, what is the next step? Are we going to call repository layer or database logic inside the controller itself? No. So then what you have to do? You have to pass this information. You have to pass this information to the next class, I mean, to the service layer. In our Spring MVC point of view, we have to pass this information to the service layer. So what is the meaning of service layer? When I told you what is the meaning of service layer, what is the meaning of service layer? It's nothing but another Java class. We are calling it as a service class. The overall service classes we are calling it as a service layer. Overall, just representing as a service layer. So the overall service classes, you may write down hundreds of service classes. The overall classes, we are simply calling it as a layer. View layer in the sense multiple JSP files. Controller layer, multiple controller classes. Like that. Simply we are calling it as a layer. So now what we have to do, tell me now. You have to write down. Okay, now request reached from view to controller. So you need to integrate another layer called as controller layer. Sorry. Now the request reached to controller data. So you have to write down one more class called as service layer class. So what is the meaning of service class here again? A simple Java class. Let's define a Java class first. Okay, here service layer or service class, whatever it is. Service class is simply a Java class. Okay, but when we are calling a class as a service class, here it is Spring MVC provided or Spring framework. I cannot say like Spring MVC. Spring framework provided to differentiate a simple Java class or component class versus service class point of view. Spring framework provided another annotation called as @service. What is that? @service annotation. So now, when can I call a class as a service class? When I mark that class, when I integrated or when I used annotation of @service inside the class, then I'm going to call that class as a service class. Okay, so let's write down a simple Java class first. Okay, I'm just taking a package name as .service, user management, I just given service in the class name also, so that easily we can identify which is a controller class, which is a service class point of view. Finish it. So now can I call this class as a service class? This class as a service class, can I call? No, then we have a specific annotation called as @service annotation. So see here, what is the package of it is org.springframework.stereotype. Where you saw this package name earlier? Controller as well as component. Now, okay, sorry. Okay. So see here, now we used one annotation called as service annotation. So this annotation, now can I call this class as a service class? Yes. But if you go and see the source code of service class, even this is also derived from a component class. Okay. If you see the description about the service annotation given by the Spring framework, indicates that an annotated class is a service originally defined by the domain driven. Okay, leave about all these things, domain driven. Okay, this annotation serves as a specialization of @component. So you got the point now. What is the meaning of @component? Auto detected through the class path scanning. What is the meaning of class path scanning? Which annotation is doing class path scanning generally? @component scan. So @service is derived from the component. So it's indirectly a component family. So it is going to be auto detected by the Spring IOC container or not? Like similar to controller. Yes. So now tell me, this object do we need to create manually or do we need to configure anywhere else to create object for this class? No, it's a simple indirectly as a component class. So this object is going to be created by the container. So when this object is created by the container, controller object is created by the container, then how you are going to inject this object or how you are going to integrate this class into controller class? two bean classes, two bean objects, how you are integrating. Auto wiring, that's all. Okay, so let's see here. So what I am doing, where you can do auto wiring generally as a instance variables, we can take it as a field level, or we can try it as a setter method. Also, you can try that. Okay, so you just try all those things later. But right now I'm just using, generally people will follow always field injection only, most of the times. So what is our class name? User management service. So tell me now, in this case, object is created by the okay. So now in this case, what will happen? This object will be created and injected inside the injected inside which class? Controller class. So that means, can I say now controller class is integrated, or okay, controller class is integrated with the service class. Can I say now you made the integration or not? With the help of dependency injection, you made a connection between controller class versus service class or not? Yes. For example, now I have a method one inside the service class. Now, how will you access one method from the controller class? You already auto-wide it, right? You already have a object name as a service. You already auto-wide it right now. So then how you are going to call this method? Instance name dot method name. So what is our instance name? Service dot one. So if it is having any method parameters, you are going to pass those values or not? Yes, that is what you are doing now. Okay, so next, how many values you have to pass to the service layer? 4 values you have, right? So can I pass these 4 values directly to the service class? So how you are going to pass to the service class? For that, what you have to do in the service class? To do some action in Java language or in a class, what we will write down? A method. Method, right? So we are going to write down a method with parameters. That's all. So it's a simple Java now onwards. Okay, it's a simple Java logic. If you have integer a comma b, and I told you take 2 values and add them. So then how many parameters you will define? 2 parameter method you will define. Add integer a comma integer b, and that method you can call wherever you want or not. Right? So you will create object for that class. You can call that method wherever you want. But when you are calling that method, what you will pass? You will pass the real values. You will pass the real values, right? So similarly, now where I have to create a method? Inside the service class. Yes. Method taking data from controller. Simply, I'm writing a statement. So public string create user. I can write down any method name here. Now tell me, from controller, how many values I am getting? 4 values I am getting. So how many values I can define here? To receive those 4 values, how many method parameters I have to define? 4 I can define. Or you can tell me one more suggestion. You can create another Pojo class with 4 properties. Set these values to the Pojo class object. You can pass only one object to the service class or not? Yes, we can do that one also. Generally, that is what people will do, but we will see in the REST API more. Okay, I will keep as it is right now. So what are the 4 values you have? string name, email, password, as well as mobile number. String email, string name, string password, string contact. Okay, so here return null. I'll replace null with actual value later. Okay, so now tell me how you are going to call this method from the controller. Simply, you will take this instance variable or this object instance or not, object reference or not, service class, object name dot, it's a Java now, pure Java. Object name dot method name. What is our method name? User, create user. So what are the values you have to pass? Email, comma, name, comma, password, comma, mobile number. So you have email, email, name, password, mobile number. So you are passing 4 values or not? What you received from here. So email, name, password, mobile number, you are passing to the service layer. Now can we say controller layer is integrated with the service layer as well as controller layer forwarded the request data to the service layer. Is it forwarding or not? So that is what the intention of Spring MVC layer, that is what we understood. Controller layer is never ever responsible for writing any kind of business logic. What is the responsibility of controller layer? Once it is receiving a request, takes data from the request and the data simply passing to the service layer. That is what controller layer has to do here. Now fine. Now the data came to the controller class. Sorry, service class. Now tell me what I have to do. Service class has to integrate with another layer. So can I write down directly insert into those kind of queries here? We are using what? Kind of JPA framework. If you are using JDBC module, then what you will do, auto void of JDBC template object you will create. JDBC template object you will create and you will write down template.query methods or maybe some insert operations and all. But generally JDBC will be used in real-time applications. No, nobody will use JDBC 100% JPA only. So whenever it is a JPA, what? Now tell me frankly, until this what you have to do, you know very clearly. We are already done. It's just pure. Now what you have to do? You have to create a table for the table entity class and then for that entity class a repository. Finally, you will pass these values to which object? Entity object. Entity object you are passing to the repository. Done, right? So I'm just quickly writing. Okay, don't ask me again what is entity, why I'm writing. So you know from here it's all pure JPA now 100%. There is no nothing else. Okay, let me write down what I have to write down now. First thing, can I write down entity class? Yes. Okay, for example, I'll write down user details as my class name. Okay, I'm giving here package name also as an entity. So please make sure giving a meaningful package names also when you are practicing. Okay, so don't write everything in one package and don't say like, okay, controller service. Few people are still writing user, user one, user two kind of names. I don't know what is meaning of user one. So user controller, user service. These two class names are giving a meaningful understanding or not. What you written inside by seeing the class name itself, I can say, okay, maybe these guys written inside the controller logic. Inside this, these guys are written service logic. So try to give meaningful class names. Okay, entity class I'm giving. So what we have to do now? Entity and followed by the table and I can give any name or not. So I'll give user underscore detail. Okay, so can I take here Lombok annotations? Yes. So what is the meaning of no-ax constructor? Default constructor, all args in the sense, all parameterized constructor. Why are you getting errors here? You are not defined any properties as of now. That's why it is showing an error. Just define some properties. So I'm just making copy paste. Okay, so can I take like this? Even private, you know that why we have to give. Okay, so I'm making email ID as a identifier column. Okay. So user details. Now what I had to create next? A repository. New class or interface? Yes. User details repository. Okay, what is the extents? Yes, JPA repository or code repository. You know the differences now. So what you have to give here? Entity class name, user details, and followed by the identified data type. What we given email string. So now here also generally it's not required mandatorily, but Spring MVC or Spring module, Spring framework provided one more annotation to represent a interface as a repository interface, JPA repository interface, or to represent a repository layer. They provided one more annotation called as repository also. This is also from where? Stereotype package. So that's why in interview they will ask sometimes, do you know about the stereotype interfaces? They will ask you like this. So do you know stereotype annotations? Like that, this is what the question they will ask. Now tell me, do you know stereotype annotations? Well, how many we have total? 4 you have as of now. So okay, this 4 only. One is, the primary one is component. So controller, service, repository, these 3 are derived from the component annotation. So that's why you can tell them very clearly, total 4 we have. The main one is component. And the remaining 3 are derived from the component only. One is controller, second one is service, and followed by repository. Okay, these 3 are derived from, and these 4 annotations they kept inside which package? org dot spring framework dot, you just leave it stereotype. This is what important. Stereotype. They are just given everything inside a package called as stereotype. So that is what their intention. So you know stereotype annotations in the sense? Yes, we know that. One fine day I went to interview maybe 4, 5, 6 years back. They asked me, do you know stereotype annotations? I don't know really. I never ever heard a word called as stereotype also. I just surprised. What is this annotation where we have? So after that I came out and then I observed it's all because of the package name. They are calling it as a stereotype annotation. Only 1 or 2 times I encountered this question, but not every case, but couple of people will ask. So do you know stereotype annotation? Okay, so if you want, you can see. Yeah, let me write down repository. So see here, indicates an annotated, okay, class or interfaces repository originally, domain revision, leave it. So this is also serves as a specialization of component only. Auto detected through the class path scanning. So this is always, see, there is again, you can ask one question, sir, everything is behaving as a component. Why they given different names? Guess. For example, if in place of @ controller, I given @ component. and I written a normal class with @component. Then how Spring Web Module is going to segregate? It is having request mapping information. It doesn't have request mapping annotation. How it is going to segregate? It's very difficult, right? So when you're written @component for both classes, inside one class, you written request mapping, URL paths and everything as a controller class, controller functionalities. Another class, a simple Java bean, a simple employee Java bean. This is employee operations. Then how internally IOC container or Spring Web Module will recognize, which is having web functionalities, which is not having web functionalities. Very difficult, right? It's a so that's why if I give an employee operations as the controller, and that means all controller operations as a controller with another annotation, then for me it is easy or not. Simply giving the labels, red color, green color, white color, something like that. If I given everywhere color, so if I ask you something, so and so color, what is happening? It will take a lot of time. You have to find out, open everything, and you have to see what is what and all. If I given on the package level, red color, green color, yellow color, so then what you will do? You will go to directly, if I ask you something, I want yellow color, you will go to that package, you will open that box. Then you will find out everything yellow. If I mixed everything, so that is why they given a separate annotations as a labeling annotations. Okay, as a labeling annotations, they given different to differentiate a simple component versus controller, a simple component versus a service. Okay, so in place of service, you can use component. It will work. Tomorrow, what you can do? Remove @service, especially at service layer, and write @component. It will work. But in couple of in-end details, some of the scenarios you need to use always service only, but try to use always service. Okay, so repository I did just define. Okay, if you see here, controller, service, component, repository. Leave about the index. We no need of this. Especially controller, service, component, repository. These are all from which package? Stereotype package. org.spring framework. Okay, fine. Now what I have to do? What I have to do now? Create entity object. So what is our entity class? User details. Now you guys are understanding for what kind of classes we are creating bean objects. It's not like for every employee. So now the data coming from where? User information, email, name, all this, front end, reaching to the service, controller to service. Are you creating object for the user details like earlier we created in the Spring Core module, like employee E equal to new employee? But today those employee details you are getting from the front end. Actually, where you are using auto wiring nowadays, now you are understanding the real importance of auto wiring, especially these kind of layers, controller classes, service classes, repository classes or repository interfaces. These areas we are going to use what? The auto wiring or something like that. Okay, so tell me what is the values I have to pass? Details dot set email ID of email ID. Details dot set mobile number, contact. Details dot set name. Okay, name. Details dot set password. Okay, the password. So these are all values I pass it to the entity class or not. Now what I have to do? We have to auto wire repository with this class or not? Yes. We written already service classes, operation classes in JPA. So what you have to do? Auto wire. What is our repository name? User management repository or something, user details repository. User details repository dot, yes, save. And then object of details. Okay, if everything is good, then I can return user registration successful. So here you can write down one more condition also. For example, to do item. So what is the meaning of? So generally, if I am passing same email ID one more time, a user registering with same email ID second time, will you allow them? What you will give generally? Email ID is already existed. So then how can you verify that condition? Yes, find by ID. Yes, exactly. So that is how logically you have to think, guys. Good. So you just implement this. So what you can do, user repository dot find by. Okay, here I can use directly ID because it's an email ID column. So if it is having dot get or if present something like that, is present in the sense what is the message? You know what is the is present? So what I have to return now here? Email already existed. Now you are understanding how you are able to see Instagram, Facebook, Google level, why you are getting that message. This email ID is already occupied. Try with new other email ID. This is what they are not doing anything else. Now you can also implement your own Gmail application. Okay. So email already existed. Try with new one or something like that. You can write down any message. Okay. If it is not there, then else part is all about. Then you are going for the save. Otherwise, you are returning from here itself. You are not going for the save operation also. So if everything is good, then user registration is successful. Find way. Oh, okay, okay, good. I did not observe it. Okay, email value I have passed. Okay, so is everything is done? Anything else we are pending now? So in this case, what we did? Service. So we integrated service to repository or not? This we already know. It's all pure JPA. Finally, database table. So it's all 100% JPA. So from service to repository. Repository is going to contact with the database, performs operations on the database, JPA module. Now, JPA will give response back to the service, whatever your service is giving response back to the controller. Controller is going to give response back to the client. In between, you are having so on so process, dispatches are late, view resolver, all these things. Now you are able to understand the entire full stack flow or not? Front end to back end, up to database. You are getting a now, I think today you got the clarity why you are learning the Springboot. I think Spring JPA, the end-to-end flow, data taking from the front end for processing via back end, reaching to the database, finally inserting into database. The right dynamic response also you are getting to the client user registered successfully. Email is already existed. I think today you got an overview how finally a Spring Boot application is working. So this is what exactly we will do in our real-time applications also 70 to 80%, always every day. Maybe nowadays in this concept we have, you don't have view layers nowadays. You have what? API integrations, APIs you are creating, but the functionality is same guys again. Whatever I just, okay, told you we are going to avoid the view layer. That is what only difference between REST services and regular approach. But the functionality service repository, what we are discussing today, 100% we are going to use again in the REST API implementation also. Just wait, probably we'll start from tomorrow. Okay, now let's start our application. Restart our application. Now what is happening? User enters his information. The object is passing to the controller class, and inside the controller, you extracted data from the request object. And I will ask you one more question. Why can't I pass request directly to the service class? So can I generally, Can I pass this object request directly to the service class? Why? How? So do you know a servlet request object can be passed to a simple Java class? It should be again another. It should be again another servlet. But service class is a servlet class. It's a simple Java class. It's a simple Java class. So then how can you pass request object to the service class? So that is the purpose what we did. We extracted data from the servlet request as a simple Java data type values, a string data type values or integer data type values and all. Now these are all pure simple Java data types. You can pass wherever you want. That is why we extracted. You should know all these points. Result set is transferable to another class. Result set object. I discussed this one also. No. Why? Once you are closing the connection, result set will be closed. So that is what. Similarly here also request servlet request you cannot transfer. Transfer when another class is also a servlet class. Then you can do request dispatcher dot forward. What you are doing? You are forwarding request to another servlet. That is what. Okay, see here. Any exceptions we got? No, right? Everything is good. And see what happened here? Controller is created or not? Controller object. Service object is created or not? I written one or two classes default constructors. Okay. So this is a component class. This is a service class. This is a controller class. Everything is scanned or not? Everything is created. Now let's send the request. What is the home page request? User slash welcome or something what we given. Register, right? I will, yeah. So register. So you can do one thing also. I can give you an idea. Okay. So what you can do, you can write down a JSP like register login. Welcome to, you just implement this guys on your own. As assignment, take it as welcome to Flipkart, something like that. Okay. So do you have account or something, whatever you will see behavior or sign up or register, something like that. So user want to click on register, then sign up button. And if you want to do login, login button. So you know how to implement now. User clicking on the sign up, you have to load a JSP called as user register dot JSP. If user clicking on the login, user login dot JSP. So inside user login, you will write down two fields, email ID and password. So you guys can take this. Previous batch students are already implemented on their own. Nothing. I will give you idea also what you have to do. So what you will do for this, first you will write down a JSP page or not. You will write down two submit buttons with this message. Now for first submit button, what you will give? Action equal to so and so JSP page again, or so and so endpoint what you created in the controller class. And that controller method will return again user register.jsp. So for this button, whatever you given the action, so for that you will write down a method inside the controller class. And from that controller, you will return this view, below view, string user register. Then it will load automatically user register.jsp. Now after user register.jsp, we already written that logic only. Login is just like login flow. Similarly, here also, you can write down one more login inside the controller by returning login as a view name as a user login or something like that. You can give any file name. Okay, then it will display login page. Email ID and password, give button name as a login. Then click on the login button. Then what is the method you will use? At how you are validating email ID and password? How can I validate in JPA? Find by email and password. Done. If you found one result set, one value, one record, then email user is existed. If user is found 0, something combination is wrong, you will give a message like combination is wrong. I mean invalid credentials. If it is fine, welcome to home. Like you can display his first name, full name, something like that. You can take lot of columns when you are practicing. Okay, full name, first name, last name, gender, contact, qualification. You can take couple of columns. Okay, don't take 2-3 columns like me also, like me in the training. Okay, fine. So let's execute first before leaving the class. So what I have to do now? Register, clicking on the register. Any problem? Type not allowed, status 405. Method not allowed. Where I have user, I don't have any user, right? Why I given user? Flipkart / register. So what happened now? I mean, it's simply loading the page. This we know that we already discussed from last 2 to 3 days. Dilip@gmail.com. Password Dilip 111. Mobile number I'll give something like this. So once you are clicking on the submit, what will happen now? The request reached to this method or not? So because of the action you defined in the form level, front end level, this one, you define method as a post, request finally reached to this method. So you are extracting data from the request object and the data you are passing to the service class. Now data finally reaching to the service class. You are passing data to where? Service class. And from the service class, you are passing data to the repository. So repository will persist the data or save data into database level. Internal server. Sorry. Which one? Oh, okay. Table is not there. Even I thought of giving it, I forgot. Now that's why you got this exception. Maybe table is not existed or something. Yeah, Hibernate exception. Table is not existed. Not a problem. So here you got table not existed. I thought of giving as update, but I forgot. But anyway, you got same exception or not? Finally, okay. In this case, data finally reaching to the DB or not? Maybe table is not there, but finally your flow is good or not? Controller to service, service to repository, repository to DB. But at the time you don't see table. Okay, so what I can do? You can create table manually or you can give here something like update. Okay, let me restart my application. I don't see. Okay, let's wait until you are seeing that message. Server started. So please practice always in a in an understanding manner. Don't practice in a by-hearting manner. Understand the flow, front end, controller. Okay, I got data from here to here. I'm passing to the service layer, service to repository. When you are doing the practice, also make step-by-step practice. Don't write everything at a time and don't execute everything at a time. First, write down view layer. Is it loading or not? Test it. If it is loading, then go for the controller layer logic. Print data at controller level. Then test it. Is it really printing or not? That means data is coming. Then write down the service class. It's not like in a by-hearting manner, view file, controller, service, repository, everything you are typing at a time and you are executing your application and you are getting confused where you are facing the problem. Now, for example, if you are going step by step, what will happen? You are having a clarity. View layer is working, controller layer is working, but when you return the service class, somehow you are getting exception. Then problem is where? somewhat in between controller versus service. Then you can easily identify your problem. You are narrow downing the problem. So that is how practice has to be happened step by step. Don't write everything at a time and don't execute everything at a time. Okay. So it started now. Let me send request one more time / register Dilip@gmail.com. Dilip123. Okay, mobile number I'll give. So what is this? User registered successfully for Dilip@gmail.com. So you want me to show in the DB also? Yes, you will not trust. So at least you will trust now. Insert into user details. Okay, now for example, if I given same Dilip@gmail.com, what is the behavior? Okay, I'll use whatever I want, but email ID is same email ID. Password, I'll use something else. Mobile number, I will use something else. Now click. What is why? What's happening? I'll tell you. Sorry. In service class. Okay. Here you need to replace dynamically, right? So the response coming from where? String result, right? So this result dynamically you have to replace. That's why it is printing always static content. It should be dynamic, right? So what I have to do? Result plus email, or you can. Okay, now what will happen dynamically? If you observe here, it's no insert happened. That means our logic is executed. Only thing is we written static content here. Now dynamically you are getting result from the service layer. So based on that. Now here one point I would like to introduce. Now what we are doing for testing purpose, we are restarting our application or not? We are always restarting. Whenever you are making a small change, you have to restart your application. To avoid this problem, Spring Boot provided one more module or one more starter, one more concept called as Spring Boot Dev Tools, Developer Tools. Dev in the sense Developer Tools. They given one more starter called as Dev Tools, Developer Tools. So what it is doing is, if you are adding that to your project, or when you are creating Spring Boot project, if you are adding that starter, I'll show you here. So generally you will create project Spring Boot starter. So what are the modules you are taking? What are the modules? JPA, web, driver, Lombok, right? So along with that, there is one more option called as developer tools. Expand it. What is this? Spring Boot Dev Tools. If you taken this one extra Dev Tools, what it will do, how it will help us is, when you are making a small change and when you are doing the control S, or that means saving the change, automatically restarted, reloaded your new changes in the background. You don't need to go again, restart something like that. You don't need to do that. If I made a small change here, control S I did, automatically your application is going to be reloaded or restarted. Directly you can go for the testing. You can avoid what? Restarting every time for small changes also. That is what the importance of DevTools. Someone else in the last class told like DevTools is a dependency when you are creating the web module. Is it really a dependency? No, it's not mandatory. Only thing is, if you want to make developer as a productivity is more, earlier case I used to go always coming here, restart, or go here, right click, run as Spring Boot application. But now you need to do all these things. No. But for current project, we have that. We are not taking DevTools for the current project. I created a new project. So if you want to add existing thing to the current project, just find out that starter, copy paste in the pom.xml file. So see here, what is this? Springboot dev tools. It is working at runtime. So copy this dependency, go to our form.xml file, our current project, copy paste. Now our project is having dev tool support or not? Yes, that's all. Only thing is, technically, programmatically, there is no impact or there is nothing you are going to get for the dev tools. Dev tools is always simply reloading, restarting your changes whenever you are making the changes. Okay, what I will do here, stop. When you are adding something in the pom.xml file, please make sure one time you are just doing the Maven update. Maven update. That means something you made change in the pom.xml file. Sometimes our editors are not taking those latest changes, what you added in the pom.xml file. It's not updating it's not recompiling in the background. So that's why it's better to go with Maven update project especially when you are touching the pom.xml file. Okay. So even you can do any number of times Maven update. So what it will do internally, it just refreshing or recompiling all our source, everything is regenerated in the background. Now let's start our application. Only first time you will start your application now. Start. Okay, let it be started. I will give it as none. So with this, JSP integration or view layer integration, I'm done with the Spring Web module. I clearly explained for 3 days. You just need to copy paste with respect to other flows. The only thing is you just need to understand the flow. Apart from that, nothing much. If you are practicing same example in different scenarios 4 to 5 times, you will get the very clear idea. Tomorrow onwards, what we are going to understand, what we are going to learn, it's all REST API implementation. It is more important nowadays than the JSP integration. Okay. So I will show that. Let's complete this execution once. Now, for example, if I given none here and I did Control S, do I need to restart my application? No, then it is automatically restarting or redeploying. I can call it as redeploying your application one more time on the Tomcat server with the latest changes, So that is what the importance of DevTools. Okay, let me make it as none. Save it, Control S. See, automatically restarted or not? That is what the importance of DevTools, but it's not mandatory. In interviews, when you are freshers, they will ask you, is it mandatory to take DevTools? Is it mandatory? Only thing is to avoid the restart, but it will helpful. It is lot of helpful. When you are doing the continuous concentrated development, unnecessarily you have to go small change you did, one spelling mistake you corrected, and again you have to go restart. Again you have to go restart. But here it's helping us. Okay, save it. Okay, done. Now I did not restart it. Go to the register one more time. I'll give quickly dilip@gmail.com. So the data coming as empty. Why? Even small. Okay, let's quickly. First of all, see, when you are getting these kind of problems, you just make sure like this. What is the result coming from service to controller? Okay, so let me send request one more time. Same email ID. If you given different email ID, it is working. Okay, let's see. First of all, for example, different email ID. So some empty response. You got user registration successfully, but only thing is you are getting problem here. View name, add object. No. Data is coming in now after making change here. Earlier response also we are not seeing. User registration completed. Insert is happened. Okay, now it is getting. Only thing is, it is we given earlier result. So probably it is taking same confusion point of view. So I just change it to response and I given the response. Now if you given again, so you are getting email already existed or not? If you given again a new email ID, Naresh, submit it, you are getting successful or not? So that is what the meaning of front end to back end integration. You understood now the real importance of Spring Web Module or the real importance of Spring Framework. At least you got an idea today. The overall Spring Framework importance now. Web module, JPA module and everything. So if you want to implement this kind of functionalities in our servlets, usually it will take longer time. And you have to write down a lot of source code. You have to write down repeated code again and again. But Spring is helping us to avoid lot of configurations, writing very less amount of code, making our code in a layer oriented architecture and making our code is in future maintainable and as well as enhanceable also. Okay, so we will see more things about the REST API tomorrow. Okay, I will start REST API implementation tomorrow. Okay, so that's all. I will upload this example. Just practice.